Hello, everybody. Rising Ground. Rising Ground is one of New York's largest and most impactful human services organizations. This wasn't always the case. It's had its ups and downs, like most good organizations have experienced. But when Alan Mucatel joined Rising Ground, I always want to call it Rising Stars because it's really an organization of a lot of rising stars, but it's Rising Ground. When he joined Rising Ground as CEO, well, he walked into a crisis. Finances weren't quite the way they needed to deliver all the programs they wanted to do. So the organization was facing a very uncertain future, and it's an organization that New York City really needs. So today we're going to be talking with Alan about how he turned it around, how he gathered people, rallied them, and got this back to where it is today, which I'm going to let him tell you, because wow, is it impressive. So thank you, Alan, for joining.
Diane, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is really my pleasure. So I'd like to know a little bit about you before we get into Rising Ground, because I want to know, why did you go this route in life?
Well, I'm a native New Yorker and I love my city. That is really a genesis of so much for me. And I have chosen to work in the nonprofit human services field since the very beginning of my career. I went to business school, and when I was leaving business school, I realized that whatever direction most people were flowing, it just wasn't working for me. I deeply believe in, I guess one analogy would be, I want everybody to have a place at the table and to be part of the community that I'm part of, and to benefit together from all that we each can offer. And so that has always been a motivator for me. And I've been very, very fortunate to have a really wonderful career that's led to this point today.
Wait a second. We have to go backwards a little before we go forwards. Where do you think that motivation originated from? What's within you, or what's within your environment?
Well,
That?
that's a great question. It's maybe not so easy to figure out exactly, I'm sure, but I grew up in a household that was very caring and loving, and I know that I benefited from that in many, many ways. Um, I went to New York City public schools. I grew up in a New York City housing project. And yet I had so many opportunities presented to me that I worked hard, of course, and I was a good student and all those things. But there were so many opportunities presented to me along the way, I think, that I realized that that's the way it should be for everybody. And that when I'm actually going to quote our own our own motto a little bit. When folks have hope and opportunity, we're all able to thrive. And even if life has various challenges, which it does for every single person. So I think some of it just came from just good fortune, and then watching what was happening around me as well.
Wow. Now, at some point, you came to Rising Ground. How did that come about? Were you recruited? Were you just looking and found it?
Well,
Did they need a turnaround specialist?
For folks who are of a certain age, there was an expression, I got my job through the New York Times. I don't know, Diane, if you were in here, but
I can relate to that.
Okay, so that was the ad that the New York Times used to have. And back then, of course, it was before the internet. Exactly, 100%. So you would just go and you would cut out the little ad, and then you would start calling, right? And I got every single job I've ever had through the New York Times. So here's my plug.
It's so funny because I actually think they should bring that back. Because working with so many people who are looking for jobs, and they're like, I don't even know where to go. I'm like, yeah, it's a shame the New York Times doesn't still have that 2-inch thick, help wanted section.
Well, I hope somebody from the New York Times is watching this, and I just got a great promo for them, and they're going to call me up and say, I want you to be our spokesperson. But it is true. I got all my jobs through the New York Times. And there was an ad for, the organization used to be called Leake and Watts after its original founders from 1831. We can get into that part if you want at some point. But I had recognized that the organization I had worked in human services in several years before coming here. I had taken a position for 10 years. Even though I lived in New York City, I commuted to New Jersey and worked for a wonderful organization that at the time was called Cerebral Palsy of North Jersey. I
Oh,
thought to myself, oh, I'm going to go do this. They offered me a job as the executive director, so it was a promotion for me.
wow. Big
Yeah,
organization.
I was feeling great about that. And I thought, oh, I'll just go there for 2 years. I want to go back to New York City, to the place I love. And I stayed there for a full decade. And then I realized there is still, New York is beckoning me. I need to come back. And when I was looking for work, there was an ad for Leek and Watts, which I had remembered from my prior work before CPNJ. And I didn't know the challenges they were facing. I only knew
Mhm,
them as another organization that was having a big impact and doing some interesting work, but I
mhm.
really didn't know what I was stepping into.
Huh. So you step into it, and what's your first reaction day 1, 2, and 3?
So a
Because
cut,
first was probably getting used to things. Second, you're starting to dig in a little. And third, you're saying, oh my God, I could
yeah.
have been executive director at a huge organization with lots of money for a long time.
You know, looking for, I haven't looked for, I've been here for 18 years, so I haven't looked for a job in a very long time. But one of the things I do know, as somebody who even has hired people, you know, the whole hiring process, you're about to get married, right? You're going to
Mhm,
marry this organization that you're going to work in, or they're going to get married to you. They're hiring you as a colleague. And no matter how good a job I think you do in terms of researching and trying to figure out, it's really an imperfect process, right? And so I took a job really motivated by what I had understood about the organization, the people I met, the members of the board of directors and some key staff members, who I thought, I want to be with these folks. And I didn't really fully honestly appreciate some of the challenges that the organization was, sorry, not felt, but was experiencing. And I'm not so sure that the organization itself
knew.
really knew what the situation had been. And so I don't want to convey like as if there was a deceptive component to it. I just don't think there wasn't enough bubbling up in the surface through that process.
Oh, I
And
can believe that wholeheartedly.
yeah, and
I think that's an interesting thing for any organization. When you bring, like, I've always, I've grown fairly large businesses, well, small, 60 employees, but large for me.
yeah.
And, when I would bring in someone who wasn't homegrown, they often came with a totally different perspective on and perceptions of where I was going right or wrong. And I always embrace that. I'm like, wow, okay. I don't have that experience of a mega agency. So you learn differently.
100%. I mean, there is so much to be gained, first of all, from people growing up in organizations and their experiences
Mhm.
and their institutional knowledge. All that is valuable. Equally valuable is what somebody new coming to a space can
Yeah.
bring. And so I think a thriving organization holds space for both type
Mhm.
of individuals. And that's how organizations grow and advance further along the way. So in my case, in this situation, there were a lot of pressures at then Leak and Watts. There were lots of signs externally, but I don't think anybody was in the position to to really piece together the full circumstance, and that's what I went about doing.
Mhm. And how did that look? Did you have to start with fundraising first and say, "Okay, before I've got this vision of where things can go, but I need some money." Is it a chicken and an egg or, "Oh, I actually need some people so I can convince the fund, the money that I've got it all together here. We just need to keep it going." Like, what comes first?
Okay, so and it's 18 years, and so some of those things I'm sure memories, as you know, our memories, we don't lose our memory, but our own vision of things do change. So I'll try to be, I of course want to be as honest about what I recall and what I experienced as I can be. But here's a couple things that happened when I got there. So
Mhm.
as I was coming 1 day a week for about 4 months before I actually started to give a nice transition to the place that I had been leaving. I'd been there for a decade. So I did not make an abrupt change, and I was coming once a month. And during that several month period, I started to learn different things. For example, I walked into my first sort of senior leadership meeting, and a person in the leadership team stood up and said, "Why did you want to take this job?" Not, "Hey, why were you interested in us?" But they said it in this tone of making me aware that all was not well.
Right.
And examples of ways in which things were not well, 80% of our programs were in some form of not just corrective action status with the varying funding sources, but like a heightened level of scrutiny. The
What
quality of
does
the program.
corrective action status mean?
So it can mean different things in different types of work, but
Mhm.
we are the human services world is a highly regulated world, as well it
Mm.
should be, right? We're responsible for people's lives. People should be paying attention not only to how we're spending public dollars, for sure. We
Mhm.
should also be paying attention to what is the quality of that work? How are
Mm.
people interacting with the people we serve? Are we delivering, whether it's life safety situations, like how quickly somebody can evacuate from a building in time if that's where they
Right.
live, but it could be also, are you seeing the person as frequently you're supposed to be seeing them?
Mm.
Is the work that you're doing with somebody actually supportive of who they are and where they want to go? So we should be scrutinized heavily, and we are.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when you get these audits and reviews that occur, there's always things that external auditors are going to see that go like, "Oh, you can do this better. You need to fix that." That's
Mhm.
perfect. That's the way it should be. And good organizations use the information and feedback we're getting from external reviews and our own reviews to make things better. You
Uh-huh.
asked something about what makes organizations good, and I'm going to go back to this question about what I saw when I got here. But really, it's not that organizations, human service organizations or any other organization, it's not that an organization has to always be performing at 100%. Frankly, no place performs at 100% all the time. It's not possible.
Mhm.
Human beings are fallible. The
Yep.
question is, what do you do when something is not 100%? What do you
Mhm.
do when something goes wrong? Like,
100%.
how quickly do you acknowledge that you have a problem? And then what do you do to fix it?
Yeah.
That is the magic sauce,
It's
almost
so
in my
true.
mind.
I've said
Yeah.
that for years. You know what? We're gonna screw up. We may screw up royally, but it's gonna be how we recover that what, we build our legacy on. Can we fix it? Can we own it, fix it, and change whatever we need to do so it doesn't happen again?
Diane, preach. You're in the right. You're in my faith right now.
Yeah.
We're in the same place. So anyway, when I got there, 80% of our programs were in some form of very high level of acknowledged problem
Mhm.
by external forces. Number one. Number two, we had just lost New York City. Had canceled a big portion of the organization's contracts.
Mhm.
When I was getting there, 170 people were losing
Ooh.
their jobs, a huge number. It was just happening as I was getting there. Whenever we were out in the public, people will say things to me like, "You guys are not good." And then they would start to unload on me these stories about things that were not good about what we were doing. And then financially, the organization had literally depleted whatever reserves it had. It was in a financial tailspin. So all these things were happening. Oh, and by the way, it was it was the financial crisis of what was that,
Right.
2008, 2008, 2009. I just
You know,
lost my. It was
when I saw the year you went, I always say to people, the only thing that might put me in life through PTSD is the year 2008, 2009. If you want, like, let's just fast forward through that year. We literally lost 60% of our business in 2.5 months.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
could not have.
and all of a sudden, no employee wanted to leave.
I could not have really from all these ways. I mean, by the way, in the end, I feel like I made the best move in my life taking this job here. But in that moment, if you were like, "Oh my God, he totally flubbed this. He made the wrong choice at the wrong time. He left a really cushy, I don't mean cushy as in, but like a
Yeah.
really successful 10 years someplace else at a place that I love." this was a dumb move.
Well, now you're branded as the ultimate nonprofit turnaround specialist.
Well, I appreciate that label. And it's not just me, by the way. And I
Of
hope we can
course
talk
it's
about it.
not.
It's definitely
I,
not just about me. But so what I did when you asked the question, how did you know where to turn first? You said fundraising, whatever. I didn't know where to turn. Literally, there was something going wrong in every single space.
Mhm,
Some people that I realized, some of the people I thought that I could hitch my wagon to, who I were impressed with that I met,
mhm.
actually had to go. I had to actually fire some people who I thought were going to be my partners in this place. So there was lots of it was a constant series of things. So what I did, I went around and just started talking to people. I talked to people in government that were funding us. I talked to community leaders. I talked to staff. And anytime I talked to somebody, I just said to them, "Oh, can you just tell me somebody else I should, you mentioned so and so, should I go talk to them?" I've never done anything like that. It was the equivalent of a full 360. It
Yeah.
wasn't that I didn't plan to do it. And it turned out, by the way, at some point I was keeping record. I had spoken to maybe about 350, 375 people during the course of time. And so I acquired, for that period of time, an understanding of the organization that was particularly rich.
Hmm.
And I was able, and I had the board chair, a wonderful man. His name was Crossan Seabolt. I'll put a plug in for him.
Sure.
He I went to him at one point because we had gotten from one of our funding sources. They produced what they actually called a scorecard, the equivalent of your report card from school, and it had letters on it that you would not want to bring home to your mother, right? So, um, and the organization was very defensive about it. And I went with him and I said to him, "We need to talk to the board about this." And at my very first board meeting, I said to them, "Look, this is the scorecard. I know you have we as an organization have problems with how the government, what are some of the things the government in this case was doing or thought about us. But when our grades are so low, they're not going to listen to us.
Hmm.
When our grades are an A and a B, and we then say to them, well, what you did here is wrong, or this could be better, then they are more willing to listen to us, right?
Hmm.
You have to have credibility. And so I said at this very first meeting, I was like, this is not going to be fun, what we have to do here. And if any of you as board members, and I had my board chair's backing, are up for what's coming next, great. If not, this is a moment that maybe you should leave the board. And a couple people were already leaving the board. A couple people left at that
Hmm.
moment. But the people who stayed, like the staff who stayed,
Hmm.
were like, this is not the place that it needs to be. We can get to a better place. And
Hmm.
so the board, key staff members, it became this sort of, okay, rallying cry. We're going to
Hmm.
get this place to someplace stronger and better. And over time, also, by the way, that very agency that gave us that failing scorecard, maybe about 2 years later, I'm a little bit off by time, the commissioner of that agency actually, when they were doing a transition to a new leadership as a new administration, and his number two person was looking for a job someplace,
He recommended you.
he recommended that she
Ah,
come to us
wow.
because he, to his credit, saw the trajectory the organization was taking.
Hmm.
And so that was one example early on that said, oh,
We're going in the right direction.
things can change. And when we opened, for example, we were opening some group homes for people with developmental disabilities in communities. We were converting properties that had other programs that had been shuttered. And people would say to us, we don't want these people here. This is what happened. And it didn't matter that I stood up in front of them and said, we're new, we're different, you got to give us a chance. I could appreciate that their
Hmm.
experience before that time was not positive. They didn't get
Hmm.
they didn't get the callbacks when something happened. Nobody listened to whatever they experienced is what they experienced. And we had to just continue to acknowledge those things and then prove over time that the place was different than it had been in those ways. And there were a lot of people on staff and in communities that had thought that this place could do well or joined at various points along its trajectory upwards, and that became the motivation, that became the sort of the strength that brought us forward, really. And then all my job was to harness their energy and their goodwill. That's where things then started to manifest itself in really big ways.
Now, you said we were different than anyone else. How is Rising Ground different than other organizations in New York?
Oh,
What
you
are
mean
your
different?
differentiators?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So in a couple ways, in several ways, we're the same as other hardworking human service organizations doing really important work in New York City or across the country, right? There's common themes about what we're about. And but then there are ways, I guess, I think that Rising Ground is particularly different. One of them comes out from this experience of being an organization that had really been in a dark moment
Mhm.
to where it is today. I mean, today versus then, where we've been on this trajectory of growth for the past 18 years that has been unabated. It is
That's
really,
really remarkable when you think about New York City and the ups and downs New York has had over the past 18 years.
it is remarkable. And
Yeah.
we are in so many different ways regarded as a very strong provider of the various different services, and we can get into the discussion about all the different work that we do. We are a place that has, in several different examples, been the initiator of things, but more often, one of the more common experiences, we might be the organization that might not be the first to do something, but
Mhm.
oddly later on, not so oddly, later on become the place. We're like a steady Eddie. Once we take something on, we are very thoughtful and we do it well. And
Mhm.
part of it comes from this experience, which is what ties back to this conversation we've been having up to this point. Embedded, I think, in our culture
Mhm.
is the experience of having really not been the strongest place that could be. And
Mm.
instead of being out there and being a bit of self-promoting,
Mhm.
we were very, and have been for many years, very self-reflective.
Mhm.
So that when things go wrong, we spend the time and we do what needs to do. We spend the time to correct what's happening and do
Right.
what we need to do. And so we're only now, after many years, starting to invest a little bit more about promoting ourselves and
Mhm.
speaking a little bit more boldly. I do think, though, in the kind of work that we do in human services work, humility is kind of a bit of a prerequisite.
Well, not only that, the my biggest lessons in life, and certainly in any work, were not learned when I felt like I was a rock star, when everything was going great. When everything's going great, you just kind of look at it as, oh, wow, this is wonderful. You're not even thinking necessarily about what can go wrong, which is why I do a lot of crisis management now, you know, because it's when those moments you learn the most are when things all of a sudden come to a screeching halt, something changes, and you have to say, how I'm either going to drown here. That's one possibility, or I'd prefer to swim. So how am I going to learn to do that, you know, almost in zero time?
And I don't know whether individuals who have joined us in these leader years in leadership roles will ever understand, and I don't mean they have to, but will
Yeah.
ever understand that has been a motivator. The experiences of the past have been a motivator that have sort of set a certain tone for who we are. So I think one
I
of the
think
things
that's a
that's
really good point. I think a lot of people, and hear a lot of executive talk about it as an issue today, that, good, bad, or otherwise, people walk into an organization and assume everything's always been great and don't necessarily understand what it took to get to a level. And therefore that, everybody still needs to like push up the proverbial sleeves
Mhm.
and, keep their nose to the grinder to keep it going because it,
A-
At some point, it doesn't work if everybody doesn't keep bringing that attitude, no matter how well everything's working, in my
And
opinion.
no, I couldn't. We are again in agreement here. Because as much as we've made progress and change to today,
Tomorrow's another day.
we got to keep going. This is
Yeah.
always the task.
There's some
Always,
other issue
always the task.
coming, some other organization trying to get your money that you're trying to get, somebody trying to, look better, stronger, whatever. It's life.
Today, there are 2,000 people who work at Rising Ground.
Oh
We're
my gosh.
we're
That's a
providing.
big staff.
There's about 100 or so different programs operating out of 140 different locations across New York City, in addition to people being in people's homes and in community connecting with folks every day. And I feel remarkably privileged to be associated with this organization. Every day we're doing tremendous work. And every day, somewhere in that space,
There's a problem.
we're not doing tremendous work. And as long as
I
we
wouldn't believe you if you said otherwise, Alan. I mean, it's just life. It happens. And it's all how are
100
you going to communicate and get through it?
That's right. And as long as you move continually, appreciate those two things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even just true about human services. I was, in fact, yesterday I was meeting with a new board member who's in the banking field, and we were almost having a similar type of conversation. And he was saying exactly the same thing. This is the very nature. I mean, I think, of course, it's different in human services because somebody's actual life we are entrusted with a very important task. But seriously, it's the same thing everywhere, and it means something all the time. So, as long as you can recognize that, even if there's we did pull something off today and we got some recognition for it today, at the very same time, there's something else that we better turn our eyes on and fix fast. And so
Yeah.
that is part of our culture. When you ask what I
Mm-hmm.
think sets us apart, I actually believe that understanding is extremely prevalent here. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in other places,
Mm-hmm.
but in our case, because of where we came from, I think it occupies a even higher um, part of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
The other things that separate us, I'd say, is there's such diversity of the services that we do that puts us in a particularly different category.
Can you give
Obviously,
us
there's
a little
various.
scope on that? Are the kinds of services you offer?
Totally. Let me just start by just saying one thing.
Yeah.
When I think of when people ask, well, what is Rising Ground about? So,
Mm-hmm.
and especially because I told you we changed our name from Leak and Watts. So, my quick little way that I say it, we are about helping people to move upward and forward in their lives. That's that rising part, by providing them with a foundation from which to grow. That is the ground.
That's
That's it.
ooh, you have a career in branding too. That's really good. That's really good. Short explanation. Fantastic.
Well, I'm really glad you said that, because we hired a marketing manager here this past year. I told you it was part about getting
Yeah.
ourselves out there. And when she sees this, and you tell her that I have a career in branding, she's never going to live this down. So I'm going to milk this for as much as I can get
You
out of it. So
really should, because, really what I've specialized for over 30 years is trying to give companies their, 15, 30, 45, and 1 minute soundbite. And you just gave one of the best I've ever heard. No BS.
I love it.
Straightforward, Alan. That is solid.
Great. So I'm just taking it a little bit further. Then you ask what services we have, and
Yeah.
I won't name them all because it's really vast. But we do a lot of work in the child welfare space, so that would be foster care, and then working with families in the preventive services. So families that have challenges, to ensure that their child does not enter foster care, or even if there were other challenges that wouldn't lead to foster care but need help in other ways. So child welfare and family stabilization. We do a lot of work in the intimate partner violence or domestic violence space. We do a lot of youth development work. We're one of the largest providers of supports to runaway and homeless youth in New York City. We have community mental health work. We support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We're supporting runaway and I mentioned runaway homeless youth, but we also support unaccompanied migrant children. The array of work that we're doing is so vast. And so that is the combination of what those things are is another distinguishing factor for us. And I'd say the third distinguishing factor for us is we try very hard to do two things with that vastness. Number one is, if somebody comes to us and they need some other level of assistance or support other than the way they came to us in the first place, we try hard not only to make them to avail them of those supports here at Rising Ground, but we also have a really great partnership with lots of other organizations. And if we're not the right place to support them, we are very quick and very easy to send them to the place where they can get the help that we need. I think that's another important
That's
factor about who
phenomenal.
we are.
If
And
we
then
can't do it, we're going to find who can.
very
That's
much so. Very much so.
that's
And
huge.
and then the other part is I think we try hard. These types of services, they're each different. You know, running a preschool for kids with special education needs is just very different than running a transitional independent program for runaway and homeless youth.
Absolutely.
They're just different.
I
Everything about it is
can't
different.
imagine. That's a big breath.
But there are things that are common in that
Mhm.
work. And what I
People.
think people, how we approach people,
Mhm.
how we communicate, how we listen to them, how we make their needs, desires, aspirations centered in whatever way we're helping them. Those are very common things. And so one of the things we try hard to do is to learn from those various aspects of who we are as an organization. That is not the easiest task, but it's something I think that is something we try hard to do, and that is a distinguishing factor.
Wow. If you were speaking to someone today, if someone came in for an interview and said, Alan, I've gone through everything. I know all about Rising Ground. I really want to work with an organization like yours. What would be the ways you would question them to figure
Mm.
out their intention, possibly, or even maybe discourage them? Because I don't think what you do is for everybody.
That is really a funny thing that you just said to me, that sometimes people have told me as an interviewer that I do more to dissuade somebody from working there than not. And I
Well,
mean,
I
not
think that would be
intentionally.
important to you. We only met during this call, but you have a compelling, infectious personality. I want to apply to Rising Ground right now and say, Alan, let me come work with you. So you would attract people to be near you that may have no clue what their day is going to involve. And when you're dealing with a foster kid or a runaway, it's going to be a heck of a lot different than the joy and glory you're feeling with Alan. So I think that's where your discouragement, that's why I asked the question.
Well, you're very gracious, and I appreciate what you just said, and I do feel honored that anybody has or would be inspired to come work here at Rising Ground because I have contributed something to that
Mhm.
idea. So and I don't treat that
Own it. I think that's
lightly.
a fact. You can
Um,
own it.
yeah. um, I'm gonna have to make sure my mother listens to this podcast. I really do. So, who is my number one fan? So she'll enjoy
That's
watching.
good.
Yeah. But
So what would you say to someone to
yeah,
either encourage them or weed them out?
yeah, no. So listen, I don't, and of course
And I
the
know
number of
obviously there's layers. I'm just
yeah, I'm not
imagining
making
if
yeah,
you were.
I
If
am
you
not
were.
right. I am not making those hires. You're
Right.
100% correct. And one of the things I think we tried hard to do is to try to put people in situations. So we really do want people to connect to the work before we make those decisions. We try to use, competency-based hiring to understand less about the experiences they've had, but how they approach challenges and problem solving to see if they are the right fit. And so how we approach the question side of things. We also, by the way, here, and we use often a lot of panel interviewing. So let's say
Mhm.
I'm making a hire, nobody who I ever hire just interviews with me. They always
Mhm.
interview with a panel of other people because that's going to get different questions or
Oh,
different
yeah.
approaches in case I didn't do a very good job. And I can't
Mhm.
tell you how many times that I have sent a bunch of folks to panels, and when they came back, I sat down to meet with the panels. They're like, "Alan, really? Didn't see what you saw." I'm like, "Oh gosh,
I've
gotta
been
go."
there. I've been there. And that's for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes you just connect with someone's personality. Sometimes you just want the role filled, you know. Sometimes you're just hopeful. I mean, there's a zillion things, if when you're in a people business and you're in a position to hire, you want to believe the best in the person sitting in front of you. So it does create a filter that you have to think twice. And that's why those panel factors can be really great for anyone,
All true, all true. And you're right. But not everybody. Listen. I think sometimes you meet somebody and you just. I wish there was always a thing that you could just say, but sometimes it's just a gut feeling, and you just know when you're like, I can feel like I can see, at this point, there's such a wonderful team of people in the leadership level here. And those are the positions that I'm the one who would be interviewing for, or am invited to participate in panels as well. Even if I'm not the hiring manager, sometimes I'm invited to participate in decisions like that. And so, and we are fortunate now as a place that has a good reputation as a kind of provider that we are in the city. People at leadership levels, or even not just at leadership levels, they know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We are a desired place to come to work, and so I
Mm-hmm.
think we do attract a lot of folks. Even I should say though, still it is a hard
Yeah.
market for hiring. We have lots of direct support work that is at the very front lines, where we have some of those positions do not pay as they really should, to recognize the importance of the work that they are. That is a serious problem in our funding streams. And so, there it's a different situation. But my point simply was going to be that you have to just spend the time to try to get at that little something that tells you this is the person that I want to be with as we continue every day, and I want to be in partnership with them as we continue to do this work, that they're going to contribute something to our team that's going to help to keep moving us in that better direction.
Mm-hmm. Are there traits or characteristics that stand out for you favorably or negatively?
Well, I think some of them are some of the values that we actually have here at Rising Ground. One of them is tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
The people who we support are facing significant challenges in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them just specific to them, and
Mm-hmm.
some that have to do with the nature of our society, the systems that they're interacting with, the inherent inequities in our world. You have to, if you want to do this work, you have to have the strength
Mm-hmm.
to persevere. You have to keep pushing forward. You have to help somebody to see their capacity to
Mm-hmm.
be tenacious. You have to not take no when you know there is the possibility that a yes can come. This is one characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
Second characteristic that I think of is service. We are
Mm-hmm.
in a service business. If you don't ultimately believe that the person who we're assisting is the driver of what should happen,
Mm-hmm.
this is the wrong business for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Two other characteristics:
Yeah.
this notion of accountability,
Mm.
which ties back, by the way, to the very thing we talked about in terms of how this organization has changed, right? It required us to own, organizationally, the things we were doing wrong, but accountability for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whether you're working in our finance and HR department, or whether you're working on the front lines supporting a runaway and homeless youth, or whether or not you're making dinner in a residence for people with developmental disabilities, you need to own what you're doing
Mm-hmm.
all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And that means, of course, you should own it when you've done well, and you should be like,
Right.
I did something great, and people should say you did something great.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oof, that was not the best Alan in that moment. And there's really nothing wrong with that,
Mm-hmm.
because you are not going to get the best Alan or the best Diane 24/7. It just does not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so owning it is the other characteristic. So that sense that whether or not people can, and if you can somehow figure that out in the way people answer questions in an interview, you can
Mm-hmm.
sometimes hear some of that. That then is to me is very attractive. Um, and the last part, I think, is about communication.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability not only to engage, well, first is to engage with the person
Mm-hmm.
that you're supporting, or to engage with your colleagues, to explain and however that is that you're able to get the message out about why something, what you need, what has to happen, whatever, so that otherwise things are not going to move forward as they need to. So they happen to be our values,
Mm-hmm.
but they also happen to be the characteristics that if you were to ask me we should have, those would be them.
Extremely well articulated and outlined. It would create a incredible business plan for a strong organization if those were followed. Um, in light of that, what would you say to someone who said, you know what, I live in Kansas, some little town in Kansas, and I know this place could have some things that are better for the people that are arriving here, people that need help, the local community. What would you tell them about starting something today?
Mm.
I mean, you've been around a while. You're a 100-year-old organization. For the past 20 years, you've turned it around, and made it, changed the name, made it more successful, viable, added employees. But what would, if you went back to your startup days?
So a couple of different thoughts pop into my mind in response to what you're saying. On one level, it's more recently I've come to realize that part of what I have, or part of that, I do have an entrepreneurial component to the
Yes, you
way I
do.
operate. I never have thought about that, because I typically would have thought about entrepreneurs, who I have deep respect for, as people who start businesses and grow them from a concept, from an idea, and make something new happen. That, though, has never been part of my journey. So the truth is, I took over an organization that was already of a significant size. I took over an organization that had been a very long time. So I don't have that aspect about what to say to somebody in Kansas who was saying something like, "Oh, I want to
Mhm.
start something like this." There's an element to that I maybe might not be the best person to
Can I
sort of hit
just
on.
say, I think of an entrepreneur. Um, in some ways, I think it's a totally misused phrase, but I think of it as the person who is idea, spark, hustle, grind, and knows how to surround themselves with people that can really help make their vision materialize, and figure out whether it's that they have to go raise money, from investors or donors. It makes no difference. You have to figure out the game.
Okay, this is very true, by the way. And one of the things I definitely am is I can grind through anything.
Yeah.
That is an interesting characteristic, and so I can see those things. But in your point to, in this sort of scenario, what you were asking, and I don't want to not answer that question, because I think it's an
No,
interesting
I
one.
want you to answer it.
Yeah, first I would say, is there something about what you want to have happen in this place that it doesn't already exist? Like, a lot
Mm,
of people love to start something new just for the sake of starting new, and that is a complete disservice. In the case of human services,
mhm,
that is a complete disservice. Um, and often things become the new bright shiny light, and resources are attracted there. Maybe even celebrity attention is attracted
mhm,
there. Um, Social media gravitates to it.
mhm,
And the question is, did that really? Because if we're really focused on the issue and the people who need the assistance, did
mhm.
having somebody else do the exact same thing
Yeah,
really help move the needle? If it did, it's because it didn't exist already, or it wasn't doing
right.
well. Those are fine reasons.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Otherwise, you're a me too in a crowded field. And in fact, you could be damaging existing good things because it takes a lot of money to start something up.
Well, not only that, which you were correct. That's exactly, I'm
Mhm,
in the same space. But also, so many of the people we're supporting, we are supporting marginalized individuals,
mhm,
right? Um, and in addition to those challenges, because they are marginalized individuals, the work that we do is fundamentally undervalued,
mhm,
right? Social workers
mhm,
are not paid what they
mhm,
should be.
Yeah.
People who are doing direct support work and taking care of a person with developmental disabilities is not being
Yeah.
paid a rational wage, not only a living wage, but a rational wage
Mm-hmm.
considering such the important work that they do.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so we have a fundamental problem in our society that we
Mhm.
do not actually value first the individuals and then do not value the work. And so the last
Yeah.
thing we need is some other, like, let's go to the next bright, shiny thing.
Yes.
So that's my personal kind of piece on that side of it. But assuming that somebody has said, "Oh, no, this is an unmet need here, and there is nobody else who is doing it," or if there is somebody, I'd say, "I want you to go and help make them better at what they do," would be the first place. Bring those talents, those energy, that capacity that you have, and make
Mhm.
that that's happening already in your town or your community, make that better. That would be my number
Mhm.
one thing I would say to them. But if the answer is like, okay, listen, it doesn't exist, um, I would say a couple of things. Well, or another thing I was gonna say was one of the things I think we do very well is we play very nice in the sandbox. We partner with colleague organizations all the time. We form coalitions with other organizations around a whole host of issues. We have founded collaborations that exist outside of Rising Ground to help better the fields that we are operating in. So
Mhm.
we would be happy for somebody who said to us, "Hey, can we learn from you?"
Mhm.
Happy to do those sorts of things. Like, how did you stand up such and such? Do you have a policy and blah, blah, blah? Like all those kinds of things. I feel like we are not just about our work, but we're about our field. So
Mhm.
happy to help folks in that way as well. And that may include, answering questions about how you set some other thing up. But the truth of the matter is, if you're in some small town in Kansas, we are a organization with a budget of close to $215 million with 2,000 people working in the largest city of New York. So much of what our experience is may not be transferable in the
Mhm.
direct way. Now, in
Mhm.
the inspirational way, totally, but in the
Mhm.
direct way, size, scale, experience, we might not be. um, I think we need to be a little bit humble about how we
Mhm.
offer to assist folks because we may not be the best folks for them, but happy to share to talk,
Mhm.
and answer direct questions and provide that kind of assistance if it was
Are you
appropriate.
funded by New York City, by the state, by grants, by donations? How does your budget get your
The answer to
revenue
that
get
is
put together?
yes. All of the above. About
Mhm.
half of our funding comes from New York City. We get some direct funding from New York State, and we also get funding from the federal government. So all three.
Mhm.
We also do direct, like fee for service work. So if somebody's coming for our community mental health services, then whether they have Medicaid or if they want to bill their insurance company, like we get funded in a fee for service manner in some other
Mhm.
parts of our work. And then we are very fortunate. We have an array of individuals, foundations, and corporate entities that support our work. We're continuing to try to bolster our fundraising efforts and the fundraising piece. Why is that so important? Even if we're mostly government funded, a couple of reasons. I already made the comment that says the work we're doing is fundamentally not is underappreciated and underfunded. So we're looking for resources to help bridge the gap that we have.
Mhm.
Often we work in environments where it's a cost reimbursement situation. So if the most you could make is the dollar, but it
Mhm.
turns out that you only, it's hard to always make the dollar. You wind up only making 97 cents, and therefore you now have to fill the extra 3 cents. So that's always a challenge for us. But when we want to launch new programs, or we want to make innovations and corrections and improvements to the work that we're doing, we're relying very heavily on the great generosity of a large number of people. And so fundraising is another part of how we're able to do what we do.
Now, is Rising Ground a organization of New York City, like of the government, or are you independent but funded by taxpayers?
Great question. So we are a nonprofit The
Mm-hmm.
tax code is 501(c)(3). That's
Yep.
what means that if somebody gave us money, they can get a tax deduction for their dollars. It also means that whatever resources we bring in
Mm-hmm.
are not distributed out to shareholders like in a
Mm-hmm.
corporation, a for-profit corporation, and that the monies we bring in must be used for their intended purposes
Mm-hmm.
in the delivering of the services and the furtherance of our mission. So we have contracts with New York City, New York State, and the federal government, and that's how we get particular services paid for and delivered. Just to be clear, if somebody is paying for us, let's say New York City is paying for foster care services and the federal government is paying for early Head Start services, we can't use the funds that we get for foster care by New York City to pay for the work that we do in early Head Start for the federal government, and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. We must use
Right.
those services for the contracts that we are required to deliver.
Got it. You know, the time on these interviews always goes way too quick, Alan. Do you have parting words you would like to share over the next couple of minutes for what people should know about Rising Ground, community, service, anything?
Well, first of all, again, just grateful for the opportunity to even speak about the work that I've done and the work of this organization. I believe deeply in this place. I think that we are trying to make the communities that we are working in, that's across New York City and Westchester County, like many other organizations across the United States, we're trying to make better, stronger communities, better, stronger families. Individuals have opportunities to succeed and to grow. And I think that is very, very important work. And we need friends. We, like all these other organizations, we need people who are dedicated to this work to come work for us. We need people in government who understand the value of this work and elected officials who want to advance and support this kind of work. And then we need friends and donors who pay attention to the value of the kind of work. Not only, I want them, of course, to give us, to send donations our way, of course, or to other organizations. It's important that
Mm-hmm.
people are involved in their communities, volunteering. All that works, whether it's with us or not with us. But for people to appreciate the importance of helping our neighbors is not only about helping them, but is also making it a better society in which we will all live. So that analogy I talked about, wanting everybody to have a place at the table, we all live a better life when everybody has a better place at the table. It's a better meal to start. And so I think in any way, whether you're an employee, a government official, an elected official, a community member, any way in which you can embrace the notion of the kind of work that places like Rising Ground does, that would be my parting message. Do it, lean in. We need you.
Just out of curiosity, you said employees. Do you also have volunteers, people who volunteer at Rising Ground?
We have a small volunteer program. It hasn't been as big in recent years. It was bigger before COVID, and then things
Mm-hmm.
got scaled back, and we haven't yet been able, honestly, to invest in it in the kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe if you're going to run a volunteer program, you need to do it the right way. You need
Mm-hmm.
people who can make sure that the assignments that somebody has is meaningful and that they are connected and attentive. And
Mm-hmm.
until we can do that the best possible way, we are limited in what we do volunteer wise. We do a lot of work, sometimes corporate volunteers. So when an
Mm-hmm.
organization wants to do something as a collective, that is our easiest thing to pull off. But
Mm-hmm.
individual volunteers is not a space that we do a lot in right now.
Very interesting. Well, I have been speaking with Alan Mucatel from Rising Ground, and this has been truly a really, really inspiring conversation. I learned a lot. I enjoyed every minute of it. It went too fast. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. I really appreciate my time with you.
Thank you. I'm Diane Grissel. This has been the Silvered Expedience Perception Dynamics podcast. I'm sitting in beautiful Manhattan Center. You notice the lighting's a little different today. I had a little glitch setting something up here. So hopefully it'll look okay on the final edit. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Alan. Please check out Rising Ground. Hit subscribe. Follow what Alan and Rising Ground are doing because it's definitely worth staying attuned to and focusing on. So thank you. Hit subscribe. Alan, we're going to move over to the green room. Thank you, everybody.